This morning from Washington by former DNC senior advisor Steve McMahon, and with us at Post 9 for more reaction, informal Trump campaign advisor and CNBC contributor Larry Kudlow. Gentlemen, good morning. Larry, when we spoke last night, futures were limit down. You were suggesting maybe there would need to be some massaging of markets today. Not necessary.
I know. It really came back fast. It's funny. I had written a piece yesterday before this thing that if Trump won, buy the dip, and if Hillary won, sell the rally. Little did I know, I get it right about once every 6 years. But you're right, things stabilize pretty fast. Look, I'll just say this very briefly. Steve may disagree and so forth. Donald Trump, there is a lot of ambiguity on protectionism in trade. I get that, okay, and I think that's going to hang over for a while. But the rest of his program is so pro-growth, it's so pro-stocks, it's so pro-profits, you know, major league tax cuts, major league rollback of regulations, rollback Obamacare, energy infrastructure. Those kinds of things are solid pro-growth, got to help the stock market. At some point, that's going to sink in. I really believe that.
But how will we know, when will we know, whether the stuff you like is kept and the stuff you don't like is set aside?
Well, I feel a lot more confident on the likes. I really do, particularly the tax reform. We've never had a problem with that. Mr. Trump really did everything basically that Steve Moore and I and others wanted him to do. Healthcare was an easy one. Trade will be, there'll be some internal discussions about trade. There's no question about it. My own sense is, and I have not talked to anybody, well, that's not true, but I've not talked to Mr. Trump, certainly. I think in the last 2 weeks going after the Rust Belt, I think his bark was very significant. I think ultimately his bite, when the policies are made, will be much less onerous. A lot of these things are going to be worked out. Now remember, he has to work with a Republican Senate and a Republican House. And that's a moderating influence on something like that.
You think it will be a moderating influence? I mean, I'm reading here the first 3 of his 7 actions to protect American workers from his contract with the American voter. You know, one of his key things. Number 1, intention to renegotiate NAFTA or withdraw. Number 2, withdraw from the TPP. Okay, that's sort of, we can assume that. Number 3, label China a currency manipulator. Those are number 1, 2, and 3.
I don't have any trouble. Look, I have a quick fix for NAFTA. I mean this. Just go to a border adjustable tax system, which we had put in our original tax reform. It's in the Paul Ryan, Kevin Brady. It just never quite made it into the Trump position. I believe it will. Look, American imports to Mexico have a 16% value-added tax. Mexican imports to America are duty-free. Right there you've got an unfairness, which I think is what the candidate or the president-elect is more worried about. Steve, I don't think he's not going to end NAFTA.
Deutsche Bank today, Steve, says the most important thing he ever said is, anything I say right now, I'm not the president, everything is a suggestion. So how much of David's point about this contract can be taken to the bank?
Well, I mean, look, he ran on a platform and a program that people voted for, so there's going to be some pressure both from the people who voted for him and I presume from Republicans in Congress to follow through on the promises that he's made. I mean, I think Larry's right. It's going to be, it remains to be seen, in my view, whether it's a pro-growth agenda. It certainly is a pro-business agenda, and it's an agenda that shouldn't make Wall Street nervous. It should probably make Wall Street feel very comfortable and reassured today. I think he's also right that some of the bark is worse than the bite. I expect that Donald Trump, when he gets to be president, just as, by the way, Barack Obama did, he'll start to see that Washington is a place that you know, is a difficult place to navigate and negotiate. And change is a wonderful thing to talk about, but it's a very hard thing to accomplish in this town. So, you know, I think he's coming here, and congratulations to him for winning. Nobody, and certainly I didn't think he was going to win, but I think it's going to be a lot more difficult to achieve the kind of change he's talked about than it is to talk about it on the campaign trail.
And Larry, one thing that factors in, I just wanted to ask you, is we're hearing from investor after investor, including Art Cashin at the top of the hour, that one of the key factors for investors that they want to see is credible appointments in the cabinet and people around him to advise him. He's the ultimate outsider, billionaire businessman coming in. Your sense is?
Well, look, you know, years ago when I worked with Reagan, this was the same. It's almost like an instant replay. Reagan comes in, great hostility from the establishment, great hostility from the newspapers and so forth. And Reagan brought with him a whole batch of new people. who had never really served in senior positions. Not everybody, but guys like me. I was 31 years old. I wound up as Associate Director of OMB, a position for which I was uniquely unqualified. I will just say that, and you try to work your way into it. I wouldn't be surprised if Trump brought in a whole batch of new people.
People like you.
And I just wanted to respond to Steve, because the issue of change is really important. You know, we got into this a little bit towards the back end last night. To me, look, economic growth, that's my area, and I think Trump's going to all be for that in the House, and they're going to agree on that. But step back a minute. What was he saying? He's saying the elites in Washington and elsewhere have not done their job, okay? That what he calls now the forgotten man or the forgotten folks are unhappy, they're cranky, they're angry, their wages haven't gone up in many years. When he talks about draining the swamp, that, without being clear definition, people know what he's talking about. The corruption in Washington, the corporate welfare, the crony capitalism, it's in both political parties, all the K Street maneuvering. It's like they get what they want and need, but you don't get anything. That was his original idea. It still is his idea. It's the idea he finished with in the campaign, and I think that you just have to look at that. That's what you're going to get. He is going to try to stand up to the status quo, and wherever he can say no. We're going to do it this way. We're going to try to protect Americans out there in the Rust Belt and elsewhere, and that's my job.
And Steve, will Democrats try to refine the same argument?
Well, actually, I was just going to make the point to Larry that he's right. That was Donald Trump's message. Actually, if you look at the core of Bernie Sanders' message, it was basically the same message. Now, the grievance, you know, or the solution sort of went to a different part of the of Wall Street or the economy. In Bernie Sanders, you know, proposed solutions than it does for Donald Trump. But there's no question that they're both speaking to the worker whose wages haven't gone up, the institutions are failing them, Washington isn't working for them, and Bernie Sanders had radical solutions for change. So did Donald Trump. And the one thing that I think Larry and I are sitting here agreeing on is the voters are sick and tired of institutions and government that doesn't work. They voted for change last night. I suspect a lot of people in those swing states in the upper Midwest that voted for Bernie Sanders cast their vote last night for Donald Trump. They weren't telling pollsters they were going to do it, but they went out and did it.
Yep.
I think you're dead right, Steve, and I agree on the Bernie Sanders thing. And again, I'll just say, to understand what happened last night and to try to forecast what's going to happen in the months ahead as the government has put together the policies, it's going to be all about change, and change that only an outsider can bring. That is the guts of Mr. Trump's message. And, yeah, I hope he listens to guys like me, and he can listen to a lot of people. But they want change. The folks, as Bill O'Reilly calls them, the folks. And the folks want change. And you know what? So do I. I want change, damn it.
They're killing me here.
I look like I don't want change, but I want change. I want change.
Larry, thanks so much. Steve, it's good to see you.
Good to see you, Steve McMahon. Good to see you, buddy.
Thank you.